Welcome to Next Gen Filtration's brief overview of how to install an H1 or H2 conserver unit. We would like to start by stating this is a general guide of installation, as it would be very difficult to take into account every make, model, and year of every truck ever made. It's intended to give your mechanic a very good understanding of what is required. This video, along with the written instructions, should be sufficient to do a proper installation. If your mechanic is in need of more information, please call the phone number or email, and technical support will be happy to assist. When selecting a mounting location, it is important to choose an area that is free from contact from any moving parts and accessible at the base for filter changes. About 3 to 4 inches will be good. Note the location has to be mounted higher than the oil pan of the engine. Use the supplied template to locate the proper hole alignment for drilling into the frame. After drilling the holes, do not mount the unit to the frame as yet. It will be easier to connect the oil supply hose and return hose first before attaching the conserver to the frame. The conserver consists of 2 stages. The first is an oil filtering stage that has an oil inlet and outlet. The second is the moisture evaporation stage with an air inlet and air outlet. It is important to note that all hoses need to be high temperature 300 to 400 psi press-on fitting type hose. All hoses are a 1/4 inch diameter except for the oil return, which is a 1/2 inch diameter. Let's start with the oil supply for the unit. Locate your oil supply on the engine. This location will vary from model to model, but is usually near the oil filter. Then measure and cut the length of hose that will be required from the engine source to the conserver unit fitting. This hose should be a 300 to 400 psi 1/4 inch press-on fitting type hose. Now connect the oil supply to the conserver unit and tighten both ends. The oil return or oil outlet to the engine connects from the conserver unit to the engine drain plug, where it can split with a T-fitting. The return line can alternately utilize an oil return port on the engine block that the mechanic may recommend. Note that it is gravity that returns the oil to the engine, not oil pressure. After the oil inlet and outlet lines are securely tightened, you can now attach the conserver unit to the frame. The second stage is the moisture removal section and is the top half of the unit. It can be identified by the air inlet and outlet fittings. Note the air inlet and outlet fittings are interchangeable, so it does not matter which fitting you use, just so long as you have one for the inlet and one for the outlet. We now need to drill and tap a small hole in the valve cover for our supply air to the conserver. An 11 3/2 hole will accommodate a 1/8 inch NPT tap fitting. Cut 1/4 inch hose to length and connect valve cover to air inlet on the top of the unit and tighten the fittings. The air outlet or vacuum is what pulls air from the valve cover through the conserver and removes moisture from the evaporation chamber of the unit, using the turbo or air intake of the engine to accomplish this. Make sure the flow control valve is all the way closed in the clockwise direction. Now it is time to start the engine and warm it up for 10 minutes to make sure it's warm. Now look for leaks. If there are no leaks, then it's time to road test the unit. Now check for leaks again with the engine at idle. Remove the viewport plug. With a light, look into the viewport while slowly opening the flow control valve counterclockwise until you can see oil starting to flow over the inner surface. Note, with new oil, it is sometimes difficult to see the flow, so open the valve slowly. With the flat tip of a screwdriver, check the oil flow. Make sure it's not too fast. It should be just enough to cover the surface inside of the unit, and that the oil level stays below the viewing port at all times. Once the flow is set, it is time to lock the valve in place with an Allen wrench. Note it is very important that the viewport be replaced and then taken out for 30-minute test ride with the unit in full operation. Once back from a test ride, check for leaks in flow by looking through the viewport, making sure flow stays below the viewport window. If everything checks out, replace the viewport. Make sure all hoses are P-clipped or fastened correctly as to prevent any premature wear. The conserver shouldn't need any maintenance other than a filter change every 2,000 hours, as it has no moving parts. This installation should only take 1 hour once the mechanic has done a few to get a good feel for this procedure.